Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back for another week on 1029 The Game and the Coast Sports Network. So glad that everybody could join us this evening. I have my tag team partner back, Kevin Midgette. Last week we came back from a long hiatus after the Super Bowl, but now we're back and got Kevin on board and lots to talk around the National Football League. And Kevin, I'm going to start with the big news, and it finally dropped. And I was talking to our producer Angel right before we came on the air about this. Aaron Rodgers finally signs. Oh boy, he comes out of the cave, and 1 year, 13.65 million, 10 million guaranteed, incentives up to 19.5. Signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers. What was this? What are the Steelers doing? They kind of waited and let him dictate the terms. I mean, he let him hanging out there all through the draft and everything. And do you think it was a situation where Steelers are the only game in town for him? And what kind of success do you think he's going to have there?
Poor, poor, poor Mike Tomlin. When all these years finishing 500 or better, and now Aaron Rodgers has to tarnish the whole thing. Let's be honest, Aaron Rodgers is washed. He doesn't care to play the game. He doesn't have the heart for the game. You know what he likes? He likes the attention. He likes saying, "Oh, I like you. I want you to play for me." Aaron Rodgers has money. He doesn't need the money. Although, was it a lot of money for a guy on a 1 year little bender like that? Sure. Pittsburgh, though, painted themselves in a corner. They had nobody else. They brought Mason Rudolph back. They were at a point where they got DK Metcalf and had Pickens. And it's like, wait a minute, who's throwing them the ball? It was dropped on both sides by the Steelers front office and also with Aaron Rodgers, who outplayed his market. Just total, it's going to be a bust.
Yeah, I was saying, Nate and I talked a little bit because there's a precursor last week to this signing, and it's like, what do you think? And well, immediately that joke comes forward. Okay, never had a losing season, but now you're going to go into the season with a 41, going to turn 42-year-old quarterback who looked very rusty. We talked about him in 2023 with that very bad Achilles injury, and then last year, I pulled his numbers. Numbers not bad. 17 games, he had a 63% completion percentage, 38.97 yards, 28 TDs, 11 interceptions, but there was really no game where you were like, man, he was the difference maker for the Jets and carried them to victory. Maybe you point to week 15 where they beat Jacksonville 32-25. Um, but he only completed 16 and 30 passes that game. He did have 3 TDs, no interceptions. But is he going to raise the tide for this team? You talk about they already have issues in terms of their offensive line. It's been a work in progress for the last 3-4 years after Pouncey left the team, and they just have not been able to protect very well, particularly Broderick Jones, who they brought in a very high draft pick. He's got some struggles there. So you definitively think that Rodgers really he's just going to be just a guy at this stage in his career.
Most definitely. And the only thing that really points it out to me is the fact that he had weapons with the Jets. He had Garrett Wilson there, Brees Hall, and they brought in Devontae Adams for him and Lazard. And all he seemed to want to go to was Lazard and Devontae Adams. And so you got a beast like Garrett Wilson. Feed him the ball, man. And it's like he didn't want to do it. So the fact is now you get DK Metcalf there. It's like, all right, now like is Austin the third going to be the second guy now? It's like Fryermuth, and they're going to have their running back situation, changed up again. I just don't see him being that guy unless the defense can carry him.
Yeah, and the Steelers they have Fryermuth obviously a tight end and Warren's there at the running back position. They brought in a rookie from Iowa in the draft. We'll see if they're able to make a difference. But as you're saying, they have Metcalf and not a lot else. Everybody's already talking about Roman Wilson, who was injured last year coming out of Michigan. He's in the best shape of his life. So that's a conversation coming out of Pittsburgh. They're going to need him to play well. DK Metcalf, I always thought he was a guy he was a better kind of number two. The JSN last year kind of took over with the Seahawks, and they kind of pushed him to the back burner. And Lockett was so good for so many years with them. So we'll see about the Steelers, and we'll continue. latest news and notes. We'll hit a lot of that tonight on Lloyd Vance Insider Football here on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Network. Bill Belichick, 73, embroiled in. Yeah, he's shaking your head. You're like, Lloyd, is this entertainment tonight? It sure feels like it. When you have an aging guy and he's dating a 24-year-old Jordan Hudson. And then there's rumors he's putting her on his staff at the Carolina. And is this going to be a mess? And part two is, will he ever get back to the NFL? He's only 14 wins short of Don Shula's all-time record of 347. What do you think about Belichick in this situation? How's it going to look in North Carolina?
I think, first of all, there's a better chance that Andy Reid breaks Don Shula's record than Bill Belichick at this point.
Yeah, and
Andy
not
wants
to
to hang
cut you
on.
off real quick, Andy Reid's at 301. So I do kind of agree with you with Patrick Mahomes, who have double digits. And he doesn't seem like he's retiring anytime soon. So I do agree with you about Andy Reid. But go ahead and talk about Belichick.
Belichick is a point. The thing is, nobody wanted him who had a good team. There's a reason. Like, Dallas was going to be his fallback because Jerry Jones had been like, oh, that's a name. We'll take him. And they have at least some movable, some talent on those parts. Belichick would have to be with a team for 2 to 3 years to get the wins that he needs because he'd have to go to a rebuilding team, and I don't think he has it in him. So that's henceforth him at North Carolina. I'm okay with that. Him going to college, hey, you get the band back together, you get Patricia and his number 2 pencil and everything else, bring them all in there. That being said, his lady friend, I'll do the guy thing, like, good for him. All right, sure, whatever. That being said, is she going to be his downfall? Absolutely she is. She's going to ruin and tarnish his image on the way out the door. But once again, good for him.
Yeah, and Nate last week was like, oh, I'm not saying she's a gold digger, but, he better watch out because, a man his age, maybe she's got the life insurance all paid up. And better get that prenup, man. Better get that prenup. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see Belichick. Obviously, 8 Super Bowl wins, assistant head coach, and in his career, and he's a Hall of Famer. But yeah, kind of tarnishing the image, and people are kind of laughing at him. Maybe there is a chance he comes back. You've seen Pete Carroll come back this season with the Raiders, but I just, what owner's going to give him the chance? Because he's also another one of these control guys. He's going to want to be the GM. He's going to be the coach. And who's going to give it to him? Obviously, the Cowboys always come up, but Jerry Jones is there. He's the GM as well as the owner. But the thing is, I know you always say, let Jerry be Jerry, because the Cowboys are always going to be bad as long as he's running the show. And, I know Steven is trying to push him back out of the front office. His son, he's like, Dad, please be quiet, because every year it's just more and more bizarre in terms of scratching your head and some of the decisions that the Cowboys are making. And we're going to go through a division by division look starting tonight. We'll look at the NFC East and we'll go over their situation and all the other teams. But yeah, Belichick, interesting thing is his son Steve and his other son Brian are on the staff, and there's rumors that Steve is already contractually obligated to that he would take over as the head coach there at North Carolina. So we'll see. Speaking of college, we did not talk during the draft. I know you and I were texting each other. We definitely got to catch up on a couple things. Draft was the second most watched in NFL history, 7.5 million viewers, ESPN, ABC, up 27% from last year in 2024. And then they had 250,000 people in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So they always talk about that's the outpost of the NFL, and it just shows you, whether it's the draft, whether it's the release party of the schedule, everything on the NFL, the NFL never sleeps.
That's exactly true. And I think basically it became the Shador Sanders being drafted, game. They chose a pope quicker than they did Shador Sanders in the NFL draft a day earlier. That poor guy. I mean, I don't know. I'll get your opinion on this as
Yeah.
well. It's like, I don't know if it's the fact that I don't think it's as much Dion. I don't know if it's how arrogant, because we just read what everyone puts out there. He was arrogant during his interviews and everything. But the fact that some of the cats that got taken ahead of him, that was wrong. That was definitely wrong.
Yeah, and that was the story of the draft. It was like they're not talking about Cam Ward, who was the first overall pick. They're not talking about Travis Hunter, who went number two. And is he going to play offense? Going to play defense? He's a Heisman Trophy winner. It was all about Shador Sanders, and Dion did not help his son in terms of that pre-draft bluster. We're going to dictate the narrative, and my son's like Eli Manning. No, no, he wasn't. You know what I mean? Eli Manning was a can't miss prospect. He's Archie's son. He's Peyton's brother, and it was all lined up for them to kind of say, okay, this is where we want to steer him to. And I did talk to a couple of guys in terms of his interviews. They weren't the best. Not ill prepared. You know what I mean? And I've talked to other guys that got NFL interviews. They give you the grease board, and they want you at the whiteboard to kind of show them, okay, this is how the play's designed. This is what's going to happen, blah blah blah, etc. And I'm not saying he couldn't do it, but he must not did it very well because they kind of put him on the back burner because of that. And I think they also wanted to give him some come ups. Also, you know what I mean? I definitely think they're like, okay, you're going to eat a little crow. You're going to be humbled. Um, and then when you talk about the Browns who saved him, yeah, that's great. But why did they take Dylan Gabriel in the third round, a quarterback who went to three schools and very weak arm, and he has a bad knee injury in his past, and just head scratcher. So Shador has his opportunities now, um, and I hear he's doing pretty well in camp. So in terms of the draft, were there any other teams you thought were winners? I don't like to give grades right away. I think 2 years at minimum to look at these players. But anybody you thought did well in the draft?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. I'm going to the fantasy scope of everything because, I'm 2 months out and I got 15 teams to draft. That being said, I've done some mock drafts. There's guys who are rookies, man. There's like five of them inside the top 40. And you have Genty with the Raiders, right? And he's like ninth overall ranked on ESPN's mock draft. He's still behind that Raiders line, right? He's still running behind those guys. And then you're going to have Hampton with the Chargers. You got Harvey with the Broncos. The kid with the Browns also. And I mean, there's all these rookie running backs. They have pushed all the way up top, even some wide receivers. And it's like Marvin Harrison Jr. couldn't even get off last year. And he had the pedigree. You got all these young guys, man. They're just trying to push him, push him, push him. And you're right. Sometimes I think they rush these guys.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because it's like, all right, they're high on them, and it's like they're going to come in the NFL and light on fire. No, that's not how it works. Even like Harrison Jr., he had a learning curve. He played a lot better probably the last 6 to 7 games of the season. You started seeing him getting on the same page with his play caller, with Kyler Murray, and unless you're, I think Jefferson came in and he lit it up his rookie year. Randy Moss. There's some guys that are able to come in and get it done, but particularly quarterbacks, it's a tough way to go. And when you talk about the rookie of the year race, I'll get your opinion on this. I was looking at the lines today for rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year. Ashton Genty with the Raiders is at plus 250. Cam Ward with Tennessee Titans, obviously, any rookie quarterback that plays and plays well, like we saw with Jaden Daniels last year, they have a leg up on everybody for this award. Cam Ward's 250. Travis Hunter, who I want to get your take on with Jacksonville, he's plus 600 on the offensive side. Ted McMillan, another guy I saw in a lot of fantasy lookups for the Carolina Panthers. We'll see how many snaps he's getting as opposed to Adam Thielen and the other guys there. He's at plus 1,300. Hampton with the Chargers, who I liked a lot coming out of North Carolina. He's at 1,400. And then you got to comment on this. When you talk about the quarterbacks and Shador and how is this guy taken ahead of Shador? Tyler Shuck, the Saints, plus 1,500. Spencer Rattler must be really bad if he's going to beat him out.
Oh, yeah.
What is your feeling on these lines? And just give me a little bit on Shuck.
I think the lines are for people and their fool's money to bet on early in the season. I mean, if you're making a bet like that, and not until after week 4, you're a dope. It's like you have to at least watch these guys play. And I get it with the Saints though, because he's going to start probably. He's going to get the reps at least, but he's still, once again, he's playing with the Saints.
Yeah.
The other guys, I mean, it's a roll of the dice. I mean, I wouldn't do it myself, but if you got to throw money away, yeah, sure. Throw a couple of shekels on it.
Yeah, and when you talk about overall classes, for the teams, I thought the Falcons did very well. They needed to fix that different defense down there with Raheem Morris, and they bring in Jalen Walker, the edge at pick 15 from Georgia, very highly ranked. Um, then in the first round, they got James Pierce as well at 26. He's from Tennessee, another pass rusher. Heavy defense. Round three, they went Xavier Watts, safety out of Notre Dame, and then they got a safety out of Oklahoma, Bowman, and then they finally ended up with an offensive lineman, Jack Nelson from Wisconsin. So, you know, do you think it's going to make a big difference for the Falcons? What do you think of the Jalen Walker coming out of Georgia? Everybody's very high on him.
I think they're doing it the right way. I mean, they went so far on offense on one side. It's like now you have to come back around the other side and load up your defense. But it comes down to Penix Jr. If he plays well and that defense can, tread water and get better as the season goes on, they'll be good. But if Penix Jr. comes out of the gate and he's struggling, then it won't matter.
Yeah, and the teams and also throw in the Ravens. I thought Eric DeCosta did a nice job once again. They got a ton of players. They got 11 picks that they were able to use, and they're going defense. It was funny because the Ravens calling card last year, their offense put up a ton of points, a lot of yards, but their defense just wasn't what it was. And now they're bringing Malachi Starks coming from Georgia, a safety who I really liked at 27. They got Mike Green, the edge rusher from Marshall, who had some red flags against him, from his days at Virginia, but they got him in the second round. And I just thought overall the Ravens did a nice job. Do you think, we always talk about the Ravens, it's playoffs or bust. Is this draft class going to help these guys?
It couldn't hurt. I mean, it couldn't hurt. I mean, they threw money at Bateman to come back. Bateman had a decent year. Is he a success as the number one, first round pick? No. But has he, he's turned in kind of like the Nelson Aguilar kind of transformation, where it's like he's not that number one guy, but he's serviceable. He's solid. He had 9 touchdowns last year receiving. And Zay Flowers comes back healthy. You got him. Andrews is getting older, but you have Isaiah Likely there. Can Derrick Henry do what he did last year? And it's all on Lamar, and Lamar is going to be judged by how he does in the playoffs. If they can add some defensive help to make life easier for him, and a new kicker this year too, don't forget that.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on it. They get Tyler Loop, round 6, pick 186 from Arizona. They're bringing him in, and whenever you draft a kicker, they're going to hand him a job. But we know why he got the job. Will Justin Tucker play in the NFL again?
There's a better chance of me playing in the NFL again or ever than Justin Tucker coming back. Nah, Tuck's done.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I guess it was kind of convenient for the team. They kind of were like, oh well, he had a very inconsistent season last year, missed about 10 field goals, and he was just not the same guy on the downside of his career. Yeah. Oh, let's not talk about all the masseuse stuff and the Deshaun Watson type behavior. That's alleged. I'll say alleged, But yeah, but I agree with you. I just don't think he's not going to be worth the squeeze in terms of bringing him back and all the PR nightmare that would be. Closing the book on Tucker, though, what about the Hall of Fame? You talk about, there's 2 kickers in Jan Stenerud, Morton Anderson, and his numbers clearly, are way ahead of those 2 guys. And, do you think he'll get in? I think maybe they let him in like seniors committee after about 10 years when everybody forgets about this situation.
Not a chance. I'm going to throw it out to you right now. Pete Rose gets into the Baseball Hall of Fame before Justin Tucker gets in the NFL Hall of Fame. Twitter poll, throw it up there, Angel. No, I'm just saying, it's that kind of close. Like what he's done as a kicker, how hard it is to get in, and the fact that you have this against you, it's like, ugh, that's a hard one to get over. Like it's going to have to be a generation to go past before him to get in.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's going to take a lot of forgetting. I was on Rich Q's show, and he said to me, well, what about OJ? And I said, yeah, well, his bust is in Canton, but I think they have it in a back closet somewhere where nobody can see it, and it's kind of hidden. You know what I mean? Because it's you try to judge these guys only on what they did on the field, but you just can't, there's no way you can get past some of these allegations and just what a bad look it is, and it's an unfortunate end to which was a great career because let's think about it, we never typically talk about kickers. You know what I mean? I remember David Akers was a great guy to talk to in the locker room and all that, but in the end of the day, he was a kicker. You know what I mean? So we'll see how that plays out for Justin Tucker. In terms of the draft, Cam Ward was should he have been the only quarterback taken? I know the Giants reached for Jackson Dart kind of late at number 25 in the first round. But to me, there was no quarterback that really stood out and was like, oh, he can't miss. And last year we had about 6 rookies quarterbacks start. Maybe this year you'll have about 2 to 3. So what do you think about Cam Ward and the Tennessee Titans?
I think it was a bad quarterback draft, to be honest. There's a reason why Sanders fell. I mean, if he was as good as people thought they were, they wouldn't have cared what Dion had to say or anything else, how he, interviewed. If he had that kind of talent, people overlook things. Cam Ward was the best of the bunch. I agree that, the first quarterback taken should have been him. I just don't think it's going to be a great draft, but yeah, I could be proven wrong, because you're taking these guys usually and you're putting them on the bad teams to begin with. So they have to have that kind of talent to step over the fact that this is a continuously losing franchise. So Cam Ward has the best shot of the bunch.
Yeah, and we'll see how he makes out. I think obviously you got to say okay, he's got a good chance for the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. Speaking of the draft, and my son Nate, immediately when I heard this story, I thought of Nate and all his college buddies. Jeff Ulbricht's son, he's a defensive coordinator for the Falcons, gets the numbers of players, and him and his buddies not only make prank calls, they tape themselves and put it on Twitter or TikTok, for the amusement of everybody. Like they weren't going to figure out who they were and how they got caught. I think it took NFL security like a day to figure out who they were. And what do you think about this situation?
If I would have done that to my dad about any job that he had and leaked a phone number and started prank calling people, oh my God. In this day and age of everyone recording things and putting it out, it was like, I felt bad for Shador on that one, to be honest, man. It's like, was it a little funny? It was funny mean, but it was like, ow, man, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, and Ulbrich ended up getting fined by the Falcons, undisclosed amount, and the NFL had a stern talking with him and stuff. Yeah, unfortunately, you got to secure your laptop and everything else, even from your own kids, which is, yeah, he's lucky the old days, man. Pop may have grabbed him by the throat. You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
oh yeah.
Yeah. So that was crazy situation, and we're hitting all news and notes here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Network. Thanks for joining Kevin and I this evening. Uh, Continue on a quarterback carousel. Brock Purdy, he gets his extension. I know you and I gone back and forth. Did he deserve it? Not deserve it? 5 years, 265, 181 guaranteed, million guaranteed, 53 million average. So Brock Purdy worth it? Not worth it.
1A and 1B. Is he worth it? Absolutely not. But they had to pay him. They had to give him money because with all the contract money that you have locked up with these veterans here, you would have to start over. You'd have to draft somebody and wait another 2 to 3 years to try to. Hopefully, that guy's the guy. And these other guys are 2 or 3 years older. They're in a built to win now mode. So if you didn't lock up Purdy, what were you going to do? Bring in Kirk Cousins?
Right. And as I looked at it and studied it, this is the going rate for quarterbacks in this day and age, which is crazy. A guy that was Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the draft, I think 257, and now he's got one of the biggest contracts in the league. Um, 23-13 overall as a starter, 4-2 in the playoffs. Last year, not a good year for the Niners, 6-11. Uh, Purdy, he's up there in terms of completion percentage, and he had 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He's got to do better there, but he's not as bad as people paint him to be. I think a lot of it's where he was taken, and people can't get over that. But he's a leader of the team, and kind of like what you're alluding to, this is what quarterbacks are being paid. I look, you know, Dak is getting paid 60 million a season. You talk about what are you doing, Jerry? Jordan Love 55 million, uh, Trevor Lawrence 55 million, Joe Burrow 55 million, Josh Allen 55 million, Tua 53.1, and then you talk about Lamar Jackson, two-time MVP. He's making 52. So it's like, wow, the numbers are getting astronomical. The cap's at 279, and it's only growing. So I think next year you're going to start seeing some more because Patrick Mahomes is at 45 million, and he's going to be he's eventually got to get higher than Dak. So what do you think about these quarterback salaries? And we always said about ranking them. Give me your top five. And you know what? We're both kind of in the Philadelphia area, and we listen to the talk radio. Jalen Hurts, he's at 51 million. He just won the Super Bowl. Is he top five?
All right, let's throw this out here real quick. In no particular order, I go Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Oh, let's see. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow's got to go in that mix. Lamar's got to be in that mix. Jalen Hurts is in that mix. And there's one other one to throw in there. Who am I missing, Lloyd?
Justin Herbert.
Fringe.
I don't know who else.
I think that's five.
Jared Goff is at 50. He's at 53 million.
But yeah, the whole thing is, it's like the guys who couldn't get past Patrick Mahomes, Burrow did once.
Right.
You got Lamar and Allen on that side. In the NFC, you got Jalen Hurts and a bunch of guys behind Jalen Hurts. The guy's been in two Super Bowls already.
Yeah, you got Brock Purdy, and then you talk about Baker Mayfield, who has revived his career with Tampa. But yeah, it's kind of hard. There's a lot of these quarterbacks that are average, in my opinion. You have Mahomes, you have the ones that you named, and yeah, you got to put. I think Hurts at least got to put him in number 5.
Yeah.
But and he won. That's the key thing to me. And like we had Ray Dittinger on last year, before the Super Bowl, and he said, he's a winner. The guy is. Who cares, about stats and all that other crap? He wins, and that's all that matters. So when these guys make these top 5 lists, top 10 lists, and they want to leave them off, I think it's kind of ludicrous because the guy won the Super Bowl. But when you talk about in terms of pay, it's just like, wow. Jared Goff is making $53 million average a year, and you know how bad he was in the playoffs, and the Lions, I just think, will never get over the hump because of him. So it's going to be interesting. You brought up a key guy, and I wanted to talk to you about him. Kirk Cousins. What is going to happen with him in terms of the Falcons? He is set to make this year, Kevin. I wrote it down. He's going to be 37. He's going to make about $27 million this year, and he would be the highest paid backup in NFL history. But it just seems like the Falcons, right, to their credit, Fontenot, the general manager there, Raheem Morris, they're hanging on to him, and he's under contract, and you're not going to be able to trade that contract.
Ooh.
I think they're hoping for, you hate to say it, somebody to get hurt.
That's exactly what it is. They're waiting for training camp, and somebody's quarterback goes down for the year. It's like you say you can't trade it, but unless a team that's trying to contend for a Super Bowl that can't spare the year to sit there and wait for their quarterback to get healthy, it's like, all right, let's make the move. Let's give the draft picks. Let's add somebody for contract. Let's do what we have to do to get him. And other than that, though, you're letting that kind of money sit on the bench. That was just a bad move.
Arthur Blank, he's the owner down there. He signed him to last year. They signed him to a 4-year, $180 million contract, $50 million signing bonus, $100 million guaranteed, which is all well and good. They didn't, it's their opinion. All right. But that was before the draft, and then they draft Penix Jr. in the first round. It's like, and who you going to trust? And you can't blame them after they had Kirk Cousins play, because you look at his numbers. He started 14 games, 18 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. In his last 5 games, he only had 1 TD and 9 interceptions. He was just abysmal. So this is the easy choice, and I think he's going to be the highest paid backup ever. So we're going to have to watch this. You talk about teams that may need a quarterback, and you can touch on them. Yes, no. Minnesota, J.J. McCarthy's coming back from very bad knee injury. You guys see about that? Houston, C.J. Stroud apparently has a shoulder injury. Indianapolis, Richardson's hurt again, and they're talking about his significant shoulder injury. What's he going to do? And in Miami with Tua, and the concussions and everything. So there's some of the teams that we're looking at in terms of possible landing spots for Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, that Colts one really sticks out. I mean, I don't think Richardson's the guy to begin with, but I mean, Cleveland could always use another quarterback. Add another one to the roster. Give them 5 or 6 now. It is. It's going to be one of those. It's like by attrition. You're going to have to wait to see for somebody to lose somebody who's like all in on the season, and they'll go and try to get Kirk Cousins. And that's the only way it's going to go down.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out, and I think they hold on him. I think he's a good guy. He's like Mr. NFL nice guy. I watched that program on Netflix. The QB1 program. They followed him around. He's such a golly gosh guy. So I don't think he's going to go to training camp and act like T.O. and cause all kind of problems and have the media there every day. So he'll probably just go and do his work and just go from there. But the Colts do have Daniel Jones. He signed. He's terrible. So they really don't have a quarterback. And then the Dolphins, they signed Zach Wilson, who, one of those bonus baby quarterbacks. We don't know what he has left. Still talking quarterbacks here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football with Kevin Midgette. Derek Carr, this was a big story a couple weeks ago. He's 34. He decides to hang it up. His shoulder injury is pretty significant to the point where he would have needed surgery. He still could have collected his very high salary on injury reserve. He decided not to do that. He decided to retire altogether. So the NFL's almost MVP in 2016, if you remember, for that broken ankle, retires with over 41,000 yards, which is more than Joe Montana and some other guys. So what should we think about the career of Derek Carr?
First, I just want to rebuttal one thing. Kirk Cousins should be a golly gosh guy. How many franchise tags has that guy signed over the years? He should be happy. That being said, Derek Carr, it's a situation I think he outperformed what I thought he was going to do when he was drafted. Did he ever, pass the ceiling where he should have gotten to? No. Injuries might have played into that. Bad teams also played into that, But I mean, you got to give the guy an added guy for the fact he could have collected the money. I mean, you or I might have just collected the money, just sitting there. That guy was just like, I'm away from it. I'm done.
Immediately, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm getting that surgery and I'm going on IR and I'm collecting that guaranteed
Oh,
money
yeah.
because he was under contract, I don't know. Some people are saying it may be a ploy and he didn't want to play for the Saints and et cetera. But, they're still going to hold his rights even if he does come back. So we'll see. But, yeah, Derek Carr, career record of 77 and 92. I think that pretty much sums it up. Kind of an inconsistent quarterback. Had a couple good years there with the Raiders, but, kind of downfall. So we'll see how he makes out there. Here in Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Network. Let's talk a little bit about win totals. All right, so I'll just kind of throw the team out, and you'll say over, under, or you think yes, no. So the Buffalo Bills have the highest 11 and a half wins. Do they hit that number? I know Nate's listening somewhere. Do the Bills hit that 11 and a half?
I think they do. Yeah, I think they're that team that's still going to push forward, and just choke in the playoffs. Sorry, Nate.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. I think they hit that number because when you look at that division, yeah, the Patriots made some moves and got a little better this year in terms of who they brought in, guys like Milt Williams, et cetera. But I think Miami's going to take a step back. The Jets are the Jets, so the Bills, yeah, they should get to 11 and a half. And also their upcoming schedule is pretty nice to them. Philadelphia Eagles, 11 and a half. They had a lot of defections. We'll talk about them in a few minutes, our NFC East preview, but do you think they hit that 11 and a half number?
It's a tough schedule, but they all look like tougher, easy schedule till the season starts, and you see who swung things around and who didn't. I think the Eagles hit 12 exactly, actually, so I think that's an over.
Yeah, I think the Eagles hit it there. And the key thing is the nucleus of the team is pretty young. And then they brought in some, they're going to bring in Jahad Campbell, who's a total stud. And yeah, he's a little banged up, but they'll bring him in and they'll replace some of the guys that left. Yeah, Brandon Graham and guys like that retired. You will miss them to a point, but they still have Jalen Hurts. They still have Saquon, and they still have one of the best 1-2 punches at the receiver. So I think the Eagles definitely will hit over 11 and a half. Kansas City Chiefs, 11 and a half. Have they fixed the offensive line enough? It was such a downfall in the Super Bowl for them in terms of that offensive line and the defense. Yeah, they have Chris Jones, but they did lose some pieces. So what do you think about KC 11 and a half?
I say just under. I said 10 or 11, I think, is about right. 12, no. So I would go under on that.
Yeah, and then in terms of the division, I think they've won it like 10 straight years. Are they going to win it again?
No. I think this year Harbaugh actually put something together.
Ooh.
Yeah, Captain Khaki actually goes into the room there and breaks out something to get them over the hump. Herbert's due. That guy's just due. He's been so close to boiling over, but can't get there. This might be the year.
Yeah, and the Chargers did fix their offensive line, and their defense is a work in progress. They have Henley and Bosa, and so that's going to be interesting to see about them. We'll go over their number in a second, but yeah, Kansas City, that offensive line, they lost Thuney going to the Bears. Mahomes looking a little doughy this offseason. Hit the banquet circuit, had another kid, so we'll see. We'll see how he turns out. But yeah, Kansas City 11 and a half. I say I'll go barely over like 12 wins. And because Andy Reid, he always seems to get 12 wins no matter what. And then there was so much consistency there with Spagnuolo and the rest of that staff. Matt Nagy's been there for a couple of years. So I'll say Kansas City over. Baltimore, who we talked about, is playoffs or bust. They're at 11 and a half as well.
11 and a half is tough on that one. Because they're all fringe. They're all like right there. But look at it this way. Let's go look over Browns. They're the Browns. And then Pittsburgh with Rodgers. I don't see them getting one from them. Bengals can either split or take both or lose both. And I say the Ravens hit it. I say the Ravens get 12.
All right. We'll hit a couple higher ones. This is an interesting one. The Lions lose both coordinators. They're at 10 and a half. What do you think?
10 and a half, really. Lost their center as well.
Yeah, Ragnow just retired. Yep.
Yeah. New OC. Let's see. You got the Vikings in there with McCarthy. You got Packers. Jordan Love steps up. Bears are going to be better, I believe. I still think the Lions hit 11, so I'll go over.
All right. We'll go to the Chargers. Captain Khaki was saying 9.5 for the Chargers. What do you think with them?
Oh, that's an over, baby. That's an over.
There you go. Jump on it, man.
Yeah,
Ding, ding. That may
Oh.
be the one. They seem to finally have fixed that defense a little bit and getting some more teeth, bringing that Ravens way, with Harbaugh and their general manager they brought over. So, yeah, I think the Chargers are over 9.5, and that'll be interesting. Another one at 9.5. I wanted to get your take on Washington Commanders 9.5. Did they catch lightning a bile last year? We'll go over the overall roster in a minute, but 9.5. What do you think?
I'm going to take myself out of the equation of looking at the team. I'm going to look at the rest of the betting public. The betting public is a bunch of morons and sheep. Everyone's going to look at this. Oh, Jane Daniels was so good. Oh, they can only get better, And they brought in Deebo Samuel, who had a beer gut last time I saw him wearing an Eagles jersey. I don't know if he's at a Super Bowl or the championship game. So they bring him in, and the whole thing is you sit there and look at. All I know is going to, once again, not to bring up fantasy, going to my last year fantasy drafts. Oh, C.J. Stroud. Oh, man, he's taking that climb. He's going to be that guy. And now it's like last year he was not that guy. So are people looking at Jaden Daniels the same way? Oh, he's that guy. He's going to make that climb. And then it's like, womp, womp. So I'm saying Washington 9 wins. 9.
Right. So yeah, and I tend to agree. I think the season's not going to be as magic carpet ride like it was last year, and they won a lot of close games. Think about that Hail Mary game they won that broke the Bears season, and he was clutch, and I think he is going to be a spectacular player, Jaden Daniels. But after a while, they get tape on you in the NFL. You got to adjust. So it's going to be fun to watch Commanders, and we'll look at the overall roster in a minute. I wanted to get your take on this one. Nate's always talking him up. He told me the other day, he's like, Kyler Murray, big year for Kyler Murray. Arizona 8.5.
Lloyd, I was talking to your son the other day, and I said, I want to hear the Kyler Murray trash. He was talking about him again.
Ah,
'Cause I was bringing up, it started with Marvin Harrison Jr., how I know he's been working out and everything else. And Nate just rolls in there, yeah, Kyler Murray's going to go off this year. And I'm like, I'm done, man. I don't want to hear it. I gave him McBride at tight end. That was it. 8.5, is it? Under. Just for that, under.
and the two coaches, former Eagles coordinator Steichen with the Colts and Gannon with the Cardinals, they are firmly on a hot seat. So, 8.5. Last year, I think they had you know, I think it went 7 wins or someone for Arizona last year. I don't think they change their stripes. I don't. I just think Arizona is one of those teams they're due for a rebuild. I say they go under that 8.5. Um, Last one I'll throw at you, and your de facto favorite team, quote unquote, Dallas Cowboys 7.5. We talked about what have they done, other than pay Dak $60 million a season. They have Michael Parsons who wants his money and he hasn't gotten it. What do you think about Dallas Cowboys 7.5?
I think they get 7.5. I think they go over 7.5. Even when would they draft that kid Blue out of Texas at running back, and Javonte Williams is now there, and they're all reclamation projects. But you got Pickens also from the Steelers, who's a malcontent. And you put him with CD Lamb, someone's going to be unhappy they're not getting the ball at some point. And can Dak stay healthy? Blah blah blah. But yeah, I think they get 8 wins.
Okay. There you have it. That's looking at a couple win totals here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football. Still plenty of time to go before the season starts. We're about 90 some days away from the first kickoff. We're anxiously all awaiting that. But, you look at those early lines and team over under wins, and it's just like, all right, you got to wait and see in training camp who gets hurt, who signs late. And then, as we always talk about complacency, guys that did well last year on the banquet circuit, and the Eagles better be wary of that because you see Cooper DeJean and all these guys, they're on the Tonight Show and they're living large. They're getting their flowers, but it's almost time to start concentrating in terms of the first mini camps out there. Do you think the Eagles will have a Super Bowl hangover?
Most definitely. I've seen Cooper DeJean bartend more than I have over the past year. That guy's celebrity bartending everywhere. He's living his best life. All those guys are. It's inevitable, though. I mean, they're younger guys for the most part. You got the older guys departing the team now as well. So, you got Brandon Graham gone. You got CJ GJ gone. You got all these guys leaving. And it's like, who's going to be the responsible guy in the house, that pulls everyone together? And that's going to be the key to that team.
Yeah. Yeah, and talking about the leadership and the keys of the team, Nick Sirianni got his big extension. Of course, the Eagles being the Eagles, they did not release the terms of his new contract. He's probably one of the highest paid out there. Nick Sirianni just signing, he has a 70% winning percentage, which is fifth best in the National Football League. He's been to 2 Super Bowls, winning one. His winning percentage is almost close to Lombardi. So he's 43 years old, record of 54-23. What do you think about Nick Sirianni and the Eagles giving his money?
It's a two-part question, Lloyd. What do I think of Nick Sirianni? Do I think he's clownish? Absolutely. Do I think he deserves whatever he got paid? Sure. He's gone to 2 Super Bowls at this point. He won one. I mean, you got look at who else is in the league, man. These guys can't keep jobs, It's like this guy is consistently going out there putting out a good team, and apparently those guys love playing for him because if they didn't, we'd know about it and they wouldn't have gone to where they've gone. So yeah, I mean, it's money well spent, but where all of us are kind of shaking our heads like, okay, that
Right.
kind of thing.
They're talking about he's in the ilk of, Lombardi and Shula and all these all-time good Bill Walsh and all right. Number one, he's 43. He's pretty young. He's had some success, but he's leaned on the collective. Let's not,
Oh yeah.
let's not
Um,
mince it, and you still wonder about him because those childish antics, as you said, particularly they beat the Browns and he's fighting with the stands, fans in the stands. So, but you got to give him his props. He is a winner. We'll see. The great coaches win, I say, 3 Super Bowls, you know what I mean? So he's at least got to win 3, and then you start talking about, okay, he's one of the all-time greats and all that. I heard on one show that one guy was like, "Oh, he's a Hall of Famer."
what?
Exactly. I'm like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "You talking
Oh,
about recency bias? Come on, man. You got to have some objectivity. I know you're trying to get, listenership in the Philadelphia area, but give me a break." So, uh, next big story I wanted to talk about with Kevin here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Network. The Houston Texans are signing Nick Chubb from the Cleveland Browns. You and I are fantasy football guys. Immediately, I'm like, all right, is there a spot for him with the Texans? The Texans got Joe Mixon. They have a Gunlier. They have Pierce. They have like 5 running backs already on their roster. You have Chubb, who's coming there at 29 years old. Very bad knee injury in 2023. What do you think about the signing by the Texans?
I've always liked Nick Chubb. I've had him, on my fantasy team a couple of times over the years, and he's an incredible running back. I think he rushed back too quickly last year for a bad team, and I think that did not help him at all. The time off, could behoove him. Maybe he's rested up. Maybe everything's right. He's young enough still, on the other side of 30 there. He's 29, you said. So, but with Joe Mixon there, Damian Pierce, who was a beast 2 years ago, and then you couldn't see him on the field last year, and it's just like there's a lot of running backs right there. So I don't know why the Texans is a fit for him, but I'd take a flyer on him, that's for sure.
Yeah, D'Amico Ryan's definitely is like, all right, give this veteran an opportunity, and 4-time Pro Bowler, and as you said, a lot of good years with the Browns. Had a very unfortunate injury. The key thing in terms of running back room is they need a guy though for running back that plays special teams. And you talk about these veteran guys, you know, a Gunlier is probably a special teamer, but the other guys aren't. So do you keep more than 4 backs? That's just a lot of running backs on a team, and it's a passing league. So good luck to Chubb. I know he'll go to training camp ready to battle and go from there. Another veteran I want to get your take on in the news recently, not for a good thing, Stephon Diggs. I was hoping to pick on Nate, but he's not on the Bills anymore. Now he's on the Patriots, and last year he bounced around. I forget what team he was on last year, um, but he's coming off an ACL injury, and he had a little fun on the yacht. And like anything, might have been caught on camera, and now it's like, okay, are they going to keep him, not keep him? What do you think about Stephon Diggs at age 31 and a mysterious white powder?
God bless Stephon Diggs. With the Texans last year, he was injured, he was gone. And then the man in the offseason was hooking up with Cardi B. Once again, God bless you, man. Get out there, live your life. And then he gets caught on the boat, on the yacht, and the 3 women are around him. And it's like, no one notices the camera's on. Nobody in this day and age. And it's like, come on, dude. So I do think, I don't know what the Patriots are going to do with him. I know the Belichick days, rather, he would have been gone. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
yeah, that's a good point because Belichick, no nonsense, but now he's an insta celeb. With Cardi B and all this, he's becoming more than just a football player. But he's 31. Last year, 47 receptions, 496, 3 TDs with Houston, but the Patriots need a receiver, and they're another. You talk about position groups. The Patriots have like 10 receivers. Unfortunately, none of them are that great. You have Diggs with his issues. You have Mac Hollins. Demario Douglas. You have Butte, Kendrick Bourne, and then they have Jalen Polk. They just drafted Kyle Williams. I mean, It's just swing and a miss over and over again. The
Oh, they're
wide receiver
terrible.
position.
They are
They
terrible.
miss Edelman and Amendola. I mean, what are the Patriots going to do?
Nothing. That's why you got to keep Stephon Diggs and his little yacht stuff and everything else. Try to see if you can get some. Because the one thing I will say, Drake May showed that he possibly could be a good quarterback in this league. He didn't buckle under the rookie year for a bad team. He showed some signs here and there, a glimmer of he could be a good quarterback in this league. That being said, you got to give him somebody to throw the ball to.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. The Patriots are one of the teams that did well this offseason, in my opinion. You have Mike Vrabel coming in there, trying to clean up a team that was 4-13. We talked about Diggs and Hollins, but they drafted Will Campbell from LSU, one of the top left tackles out there. Brought him in. Another rookie that I like a lot, running back Trayvon Henderson in the second round. They brought him in as well, and then you talk about the Eagles and complacency and people leaving. Milton Williams, he got that paycheck. You knew after the Eagles' defensive line had all those sacks and everything, some of those guys were going to get paid. You saw Sweat go with the Arizona Cardinals, Milton Williams with the Patriots, and then they also bring in Robert Spillane with the Patriots. So the Patriots doing a lot. I just don't know if it's enough, to catch the Bills in that division. So interesting offseason for the Patriots. We'll see. We'll see how it goes once they get to training camp, and uh, what guy is going to step up, but also who's going to make the team, not make the team. Diggs is due $16 million, so that may help. Here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football, I'm here with Kevin Midgette. We're going to kind of look divisionally. Each show will take a look as we move closer to the season and training camp. This week, obviously, Kevin and I are both in the NFC East country, so we'll start there, and we'll kind of look at each team record wise, and then go from there. I'll start at the bottom because I think you and I can agree on this one. The New York Giants, Ryan Daboll, hot seat, general manager, Joe Shane, hot seat. Um, they got a lot of work to do. 3-14. They got their first round quarterback by trading up, getting Jackson Dart, but surprisingly, they went defense in the first round. Now, I think they got an absolute stud, but what do you think about the Giants? Are they moving in the right direction?
I won't totally say, they stink, blah, blah, blah. I think the defense are doing the right things on that side of the ball. I think they're actually putting a decent defense together, you know. On offense, on the other hand, you have Malik Neighbors and Jackson Dart. And actually, Tracy was a decent running back for him last year as well. What's that kid's name? Scataboot, whatever his name is. They
Yes.
drafted him.
Yeah, from Arizona. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
interesting. He had a lot of fun things to say on Amon Ra uh, podcast. I don't know if you saw that. They
Yeah.
brought him on. I guess he's kind of trying to be the NFL's version of Eminem.
Oh,
I guess
God. No,
you'll figure
stop.
it out.
Stop. All right, never mind anything positive I was going to say about him now. But they have a lot of work to do on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't know. I don't understand how Shane kept his job after the Barkley Hard Knocks thing and all that stuff. I don't know how you kept him around at that point, you know?
Right.
But yeah, they're going to be the bottom of the division. I don't think there's a lot of argument about that.
Yeah, and when you talk about the Giants, at least as you were saying, building a nasty defense up front. They had draft Abdul Carter, a player we all love coming out of Penn State, just a dominant kid come from Philadelphia, from LaSalle. He's just explosive. They're going to put him on that defense with Brian Burns, who they got from Carolina in a trade, Thibodeau, who was a high draft pick a couple years ago, Dexter Lawrence at the nose tackle position. The defense has got to get better because they allowed 415 points, one of the worst in NFL, 24.4 per game. That's what they were allowing. So they're trying to fix that defense. But other than that pass rush, you got a lot of no-namers in the back. They bring over Javon Holland from Miami. Maybe he can help out that secondary. Offensively, they weren't scoring points either. They had 16 points per game, which was one of the NFL's worst. So as you said, a lot to work on with this team. Uh, Fantasy wise, though, you and I and everybody else does. Malik Neighbors is ridiculous. So I mean, he's got big numbers, and Russell Wilson coming over from the Steelers. Is he the right guy? Is it Jameis Winston or Jackson Dart, the rookie from Ole Miss, drafted I think it was pick number 25 this year.
I'll do a little timeline. Russ starts the season. Russ is quarterback until week 3 in October. Little minor injury. Jameis comes in. Jameis has one good game. Then the next game, Jameis throws 4 interceptions. And then the next game, he throws 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And then Russell Wilson plays 2 more games. He gets hurt again. And let's give it a shot to Jackson Dart. So that's when I think, somewhere at the back end of November, I think Jackson Dart's going to be in.
Yeah, I think Jackson Dart, they're going to give him the treatment like Donovan McNabb did with Doug Peterson way back in the day, where they let the veteran go out there and take his lumps because the Giants have a very tough schedule. Uh, a bunch of our Giants people were crying about the schedule they were given. So they got that tough schedule, and why not let the veteran guy take his lumps early and then bring the kid in late? But kind of what you were saying, the GM's on a hot seat, the head coach is on a hot seat. I don't think it's going to get any better. I think that eventually, they're going to blow this thing up because you talk about, all right, week 1 at Washington, week 2 at Dallas. Then they host Kansas City. They have the Chargers at the Saints. They host the Eagles at Denver, at Philadelphia, San Francisco, week 9. Maybe it'll be week 10, Kevin, Jackson Dart at Chicago. But this schedule does not get easier for the Giants. So, Giants, great pick with Abdul Carter, but that team's they're going to have some problems. I'll just put it that way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, potential order of finish. We'll talk about your beloved or hated Dallas Cowboys. What were they doing, number one? Bringing in Brian Schottenheimer as their head coach. That just showed you, like, this is a guy not on anybody's radar. Nobody wanted this job. They strung Mike McCarthy along. They didn't fire him. They just let his contract lapse. And, as I always say, as long as Jerry Jones is running football operations of this team, they are going nowhere. Last year, 7-10, no playoffs. One of the highest payrolls, though, in the National Football League. So give me your thumbnail on the Cowboys, and then I'll give you a little bit of stats around them.
Schottenheimer was the most Jerry Jones Cowboy thing that could have happened that we wouldn't have imagined would have happened. As soon as we heard it, it's like, oh, that's the one we didn't think about. Jerry, you did it again. I want to see Jerry Jones be a head in a tank of water on a cyborg body that's 400 years old, just making the decisions for the Dallas Cowboys. Keep making the calls, Jerry. Always a winner. It's as long as he's there. I mean, I wouldn't say we. I would say the NFC East powers that be, the Eagles and the Commanders, have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, and the Dallas Cowboys, you're talking about this team. They usually have big names on defense, and the defense allowed 27.5 points per game. They weren't stopping anybody. And then the offense, even though they had all those high priced weapons, Dak making 60 a year, and CD Lamb, one of the highest non-quarterbacks in the league at 33 million or so. The offense only scored 20.6 points per game, which was, middle of the road to one of the worst teams in the NFL. So they're trying to fix that offensive line. They got Guyton, they got Tyler Smith at guard, who's very good, but center's kind of been a revolving door for them. They bring in Tyler Booker coming over from Alabama, very big guard, and then they got to see how Terrence Steele performs at the right tackle. So, that running back position, as you were talking about earlier, they got Miles Sanders they signed.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Need I say any more? I mean,
Forgot about Miles, yeah.
so Miles Sanders is there, and they traded for Joe Milton, very athletic kid. Reminds me a lot of Richardson, but that was kind of an odd trade that they gave up there. And the defense, they have Micah Parsons, who really wants a contract. To his credit, Micah Parsons has been showing up and keeping his mouth shut. I thought he would kind of hold out situation. But Dallas is just kind of a mess, and I think they're definitely behind the two teams that we're going to hit on next. And this is a key question. No team in the NFC East has repeated since 03-04, the Philadelphia Eagles. Will the Eagles repeat, or will it be the team I'm going to touch on next, the Washington Commanders, stepping up and winning this division?
I'm going to say the Commanders win the division. I think the Super Bowl hangover is a thing. I think the Eagles get out of the gate slow. I think they put it together somewhere around mid October, late October, and turn the season around. But I think the Commanders are hungry right now. They have the young quarterback that's pushing. It's a Rocky movie, for God's sake. You sit there, you remember going into Rocky 3? Stallone was already the
Yeah.
champion. Clubber Lang's fighting tough, trying to, he's hungry for the title. That's Jaden Daniels right now. Jalen Hurts is in the Rocky role
You
right
ain't
now.
been
He's getting
hungry
the
since you won
for
that title.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So I'd like the Commanders this year just to be the upset pick.
All right. And when we talk about the Commanders, everybody talk about the fresh air of getting rid of Daniel Snyder. They bring Josh Harris in there to own the team. They bring Adam Peters over from the Niners to be their general manager. Dan Quinn obviously did a very nice job in terms of his defense and returning this org around. Cliff Kingsbury quietly went about his business with this offense, particularly, Jaden Daniels is making him dynamic rookie of the year. Um, yeah, the Commanders, they scored 485, which is 28 and a half points per game, one of the best in the NFL. Every game they seem to be in, their defense did allow almost 400, which is 23 points per game. They've tried to get a little better there, and they're bringing over some firepower on the offensive side. They trade for Debo Samuel from the Niners. Maybe he's in shape. We'll see. Um, Laramie Tunsil, big pickup. I was surprised the Texans actually traded him, coming over to play left tackle for the Commanders. But the big thing is Terry McLaurin. He's a potential holdout. He's crying about his contract, etc. Is this going to be an issue for the Commanders? And what do you think about Jaden Daniels? I know you're kind of saying earlier maybe takes a step back, but what do you think in terms of his play coming up this season?
To be honest, I think Jaden Daniels. I mean, it's the top of the world for that guy. He can do no wrong as going back to last year. The one thing I worry about Jaden Daniels though is the injury. Is the fact because every quarterback that starts running, you get that one hit, that second hit, where it's like hopefully you're not injured for a long period of time. Because you've seen since I have also Roethlisberger came in the league as a runner. McNabb ran the ball a lot more. These guys. Vic even at the back end was like, no, 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 let me get rid of this. And these guys who decide to scramble and run before they exhaust every avenue, you just hope it's not a devastating injury where they learn it.
Yeah, and I think Kevin are going to play a lot more spies on him. And these linebackers are getting a lot faster. Teams are playing more nickel so they can run with these athletic quarterbacks. And yes, Tunsil's going to help solidify that offensive line, so maybe he'll hang more in the pocket and make some plays there. But other than McLaurin, you're like, okay, how much does Debo have left? And um, at the running back position, Brian Robinson's very inconsistent guy. Unfortunately, last year I think I picked him up late as he was an injury replacement on my fantasy roster, and he was just terrible. Um, and then you have Austin Eckler. Has he found a fountain of youth for the after his days with the Chargers? He's getting a little long in the tooth, and Zach Ertz, who's getting long in the tooth. So the defense had some defections with Jonathan Allen leaving. He went to Minnesota. Javon Kinlaw, he went to New England, I believe. Will Harris went to the Saints. So they've had some defections on defense. But it's going to be interesting to see if Washington can catch the Eagles, and I think that's the two teams that are going to battle. And so the weeks you're talking about with the Eagles and them, and it's going to come down to the end. So it's week 16 in Washington, and then week 18 it's at Philadelphia. So that's going to be fun to watch.
I think it's total junk to begin with, by the way. Whoever did the schedule, it's ridiculous the fact that you have these two teams playing each other twice in the last 3 weeks. You're basically wandering yourself into a flex game for the last game because no one's going to play their starters if everything's decided. You know, but you sit there and you get the Eagles playing the Giants 2 out of 3 weeks there in the middle of the year. You got them opening with the Cowboys, and it's just I just think the scheduling was terrible with that.
Yeah, and for much ballyhoo as they made about making the schedule and all that, I did think some of the matchups like what what's going on here? Like the Philadelphia Eagles, who we're going to touch on now. The Super Bowl rematch is the Eagles at Kansas City in Week 2. I mean, come on, you could have put that a little later in the season where it had a little bit more drama around it. And when we talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, we talk about Nick Sirianni getting that extension. He's coming back. They're pretty much bringing the major pieces back. The offense averaged 27.2 points per game, seventh in the NFL. Their defense may have been number one ranked, 17.8, 5-1 in division, very dominant. But the Eagles lose, Mekhi Becton to the Chargers, Milton Williams to New England. You have Josh Sweat to Arizona, C.J. Gardner-Johnson they trade to Houston, Darius Slay, who's a little bit older, Pittsburgh. Even Josh Huff, they sent him to the Niners, and Brandon Graham retires. So, talk about the Eagles. What are you thinking?
I think it's the obvious thing that happens to a team that wins the Super Bowl, even goes to the Super Bowl and loses. I mean, guys get picked off. It's like because everyone, especially when your team wins the Super Bowl and these guys had the best game of their career, i.e., Sweat. Milton Williams is showing up. All these guys. It's like they're going to get paid, and I don't begrudge them one bit. Get your money while you can. At the same time, you have to make costly decisions. And the fact that Zach Bond stayed, that was the most surprising one to me because you and I think, texted about this
Yep.
as far as the Eagles with linebackers. I mean, it doesn't happen. So the fact that they actually kept him, I can make peace with the other guys leaving.
Yeah, and they're young, and they got to guard against the banquet circuit. Jalen Hurts obviously been in the news and all that, but now they got to buckle down and defend their title. They are making some tough decisions. They decided Dallas Goedert, you're coming back, but you're taking a pay cut. So, but they got to see if like Tyler Steen, he can step in there, and some of these other guys that they drafted. But I still kind of think the Eagles are going to be the first repeat champion. I think they will find a way to win the
Ooh.
division. It may be tight, and it may come down to that Week 18 game in Philadelphia. But got a lot of time to debate that between Kevin and myself. Another great week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Network. Thanks again, Kevin, for joining us. Angel, great job behind the glass on the ones and twos. Thanks for joining us, and we will talk to you next week. See ya.